Hi, you're on Reddit Confessions, and if you think you've seen every kind of betrayal, buckle up. This one started with silence. Not yelling, not slamming doors, not even a fight, just silence. The kind that makes your ears ring because you're the only one still trying. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't jealous. I didn't even suspect anything that night. All I did was follow her lead. She said, "Get ready." I got ready. She said, "We're going to Lenny's rooftop party." I said, "Sounds good." She said, "Don't embarrass me." I smiled like that was funny. And then we went. I remember the exact moment I realized I shouldn't have come. It wasn't when she disappeared into the crowd. It wasn't even when I saw her laughing a little too hard at a joke someone else told. It was when she looked right through me, like I was another coat draped over a chair. I stood by the bar, nursing a drink I didn't want, wearing shoes that pinched, while my wife floated across the room like a butterfly I had no net for. She wasn't mine in that moment. I'm not sure she had been mine for a while. People kept brushing past me like I was invisible. One guy even asked if I was staff. And still, I waited. 34 minutes. That's how long I stood there. I counted, because I had nothing else to hold on to. At one point, I caught her in a deep conversation with some tall guy in a gray suit. She leaned in close. Too close. He whispered something, and she did that tilt your head and giggle move she used to do with me. I watched it happen like I was watching reruns of a show that had been canceled years ago. I didn't make a scene. That's not who I am. I just walked out. Quietly. I figured she wouldn't notice. She didn't. Not for an hour and 47 minutes. And then my phone buzzed. One message. From her. It said, "Come." No explanation. No apology. Just that one word. But when I walked back inside, what I saw wasn't meant for me. The message sat on my screen like a trap. Come. Just that. No context. No emotion. No punctuation. I stared at it for a full minute, waiting for a follow-up that never came. Not even a please. Maybe that's what made me go back. Not hope. Not curiosity. Just that stupid need for closure, for meaning. I wanted to believe I mattered enough to deserve one straight answer. So, I turned the car off and walked back in. It was colder now, or maybe it was just me. The party was louder than before, the music deeper, the laughter sharper. I scanned the room, heart in my throat, expecting to see her waiting by the entrance, maybe even looking guilty. But she wasn't there. Instead, I found her exactly where I left her, still talking to the guy in the gray suit. Only now, they weren't just talking. His hand was around her waist. Her head was tilted toward his shoulder, and her eyes were closed. Not sleep closed, content closed. The kind of expression you wear when you feel safe, when you feel wanted. And she hadn't even seen me yet. My legs moved on their own. I didn't storm up, didn't yell. I just stood behind a column, tucked into the shadows like some pitiful stagehand watching the actors forget their lines. I kept thinking, why did she text me? What does she want? A few minutes later, she pulled out her phone, looked at the screen, and frowned. Then she looked around. Her expression changed, confused at first, then alert. She said something to him and stepped away. I ducked farther into the corner like a coward. She walked toward the entrance slowly, heels clicking, eyes scanning the crowd. I could have called out. I could have stepped forward. But I didn't. I wanted to see what she'd do. When she didn't find me outside, she came back in. This time she looked annoyed. Not scared, not guilty, just irritated, like someone waiting too long for an Uber. She pulled out her phone and typed something. A moment later, my phone buzzed again. "Where are you?" Now that was familiar. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I'm sorry." Just logistics. Like she was managing a meeting that had fallen off schedule. I waited a beat longer, then finally stepped into the light. She saw me. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second, but then she covered it with a tight smile. "There you are," she said. "I thought you left." I did. I said it flatly. No emotion. She blinked, then glanced behind her like she was checking to see if anyone was watching. Maybe gray suit guy. Maybe her boss. Who knows? She took a step closer. "Can we talk?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to walk back out and never return. But of course I nodded. She led me toward the side hallway near the restrooms. It was quieter there. She crossed her arms and leaned against the wall. "I didn't mean to ignore you," she said. "I just got caught up with everyone." "With him?" I asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then, "He's just a coworker." I laughed. It came out strange, dry and broken. "You texted me to come. So I came. What do you want, Denise?" She looked down at her shoes, then back at me. I didn't want you to leave like that. You mean, without asking your permission? She rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic. There it was. That familiar phrase. I could almost tattoo it on my skin. Don't be dramatic, Marvin. I turned to leave again, but she reached for my arm. Wait, she said. Please. Look, it's been weird between us lately. I know, but can we not do this here? Then when? I asked. When you're not busy flirting with coworkers. When you remember I exist. That was when she snapped. I brought you here. I invited you. What more do you want from me? And it hit me. That was her version of love. Presence. Not attention. Not care. Not connection. Just letting me stand beside her while she lived a separate life. I didn't say another word. I pulled my arm away and walked out again. She didn't follow this time. But I wasn't done. Not yet. That night, I started digging. And what I found next made my hands shake. I didn't go home right away. I didn't even know where I was driving. I just kept my hands on the wheel and let the city blur past me. I stopped at an old gas station that smelled like spilled soda and motor oil, sat there in my car with the engine running, and stared at my phone. Her message, "Come," was still open on the screen. It almost looked romantic if you didn't know the full picture. But I did, and I was done pretending. I remembered something as I sat there. Just last week, her phone had buzzed while she was in the shower. I glanced at it by reflex, not snooping, just reacting. A message from someone named Lenem. It said, "Same time tomorrow? Can't stop thinking about the other night." I had asked her about it later, trying to sound casual. She said, "It's short for Lenny Martin. From the office. We were planning a surprise for someone's birthday." I believed her. Of course I did. Because I wanted to. Because trusting her was easier than imagining the alternative. But now, I was done being naive. That night, parked under a flickering light, I finally did what I had avoided for months. I opened our shared phone account portal. We had bundled data plans. Her idea, years ago, to save money. It gave access to call and text logs. Not content, but timing. Frequency. And that was enough. There it was. Lenem, dozens of calls. Most under 5 minutes. But always late. Always when I wasn't home. Texts too. Hundreds over the past 2 months. All timed around my shifts. I scrolled, feeling my chest tighten with every timestamp. Valentine's Day? A 2-hour call. My birthday? She called him at midnight while I was asleep upstairs. The day she said her meeting ran long, and she came home exhausted. 3 calls back to back at lunchtime. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't a work project. This was a pattern. And here's the kicker. She had never even changed the contact name. She didn't think she had to. She didn't think I'd ever look. That's how sure she was I wouldn't question her. I sat back in my seat, heart pounding. There was a hollow space inside me where hope used to live. But something else was rising now, clarity. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was stunned, numb. But more than that, I felt small. Like I had shrunk to fit the corner of her life she allowed me to occupy. Still, I needed proof. I needed more than a call log and a hunch. So, I called in sick the next morning. Denise left for work like always, coffee in hand, phone already glued to her ear. She kissed my cheek out of habit, not affection. "See you tonight," she said, without looking me in the eyes. I watched her car pull away from the driveway, then went inside and opened my laptop. If she was meeting him, it would be during lunch. That's when most of their calls happened. So I waited. Then, around 12 p.m., I checked her location through the Find My app we both still had running from our vacation last year. She wasn't at her office. She was across town, near a boutique hotel we had stayed at once for our anniversary. A hotel with underground parking and private balconies. And she was still there. For 48 minutes. That was all I needed. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I didn't even cry. I just sat there, staring at the blinking red dot on my screen. She was still in the hotel when she sent me a message. It said, "Can you pick up oat milk on your way home?" I stared at it for a full minute. That's when I knew. She didn't even feel guilty. When she came home that evening, the air felt heavier, almost rehearsed. She walked in with her tote bag slung over her shoulder, humming softly like someone who had just won an argument I didn't know I was in. I watched her kick off her shoes and toss her keys into the bowl by the door. She didn't even look at me, just said, "Hey, you remembered the oat milk," as if that text hadn't landed like a knife hours earlier. I wanted to ask her where she'd really been. I wanted to say, "Don't you dare lie again." But I didn't. I smiled. Because I had a plan forming, one she wouldn't see coming. For the next few days, I acted normal. Too normal. I kissed her forehead before work. I cooked dinner. I even complimented her dress when she got ready for another late client meeting. I had already checked her calendar. There was no such meeting. That same hotel pin dropped again on my location tracker at 1:27 p.m. sharp. She was becoming predictable, and that made it easier to plan my next move. Friday came fast. She was wearing that same green dress from the rooftop party, the one that made her glow under dim light. When she grabbed her keys, I asked, "Big meeting tonight too?" She smiled faintly. "Yeah, probably late. Don't wait up." She left without noticing the small black case in my hand. It was a tiny dash camera I'd bought that morning, the kind with motion detection. I followed her, careful to stay 3 cars behind. Her destination didn't surprise me. The same hotel, same parking entrance. I parked across the street, my heart hammering as she met the man I'd only seen from a distance. The one from that party, gray suit again, confidence leaking from his every move. He kissed her cheek, and she didn't resist. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't confront her. I just sat there, watching through the windshield like someone trapped in his own nightmare, recording everything. They disappeared inside, hand in hand. 43 minutes later, the hotel door opened, and she walked out alone. She fixed her hair in the car mirror, reapplied her lipstick, and texted me something that made my stomach twist. It said, "Sorry, running late. Traffic's awful. Be home soon." When she got home later that night, she placed her hand on my shoulder as if nothing had happened. She smelled like the perfume she only wore on anniversaries. I asked how the meeting went. She said, "Exhausting, but worth it." I nodded, pretending to believe it, while the small camera sat hidden in my desk drawer, quietly holding the truth. That weekend, I backed up the footage onto a flash drive. I didn't watch it again. I didn't need to. But I knew I had to decide what came next. Should I confront her? Should I wait and see if she'd confess? Or should I let her dig her own grave while I built my escape? Then, on Sunday morning, something strange happened. She came into the kitchen looking pale. Her phone buzzed once, and she quickly grabbed it. Her hands shook slightly. I caught a glimpse of the name on the screen, Len M. Her eyes flicked up to me, nervous. "It's just work," she said too quickly. But it wasn't just work. She didn't know it yet, but I had already printed the call logs, saved the location screenshots, and copied every message to a private email. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I felt calm, detached, because I knew what I was going to do next. She had no clue I knew, and that made every second around her feel like I was living in a parallel universe, one where I was invisible, just quietly watching a lie stretch and stretch until it snapped on its own. I didn't ask where she went when she claimed to stay late again on Monday. I didn't flinch when she said she was too tired to talk. I just nodded, smiled, played the part. It was oddly freeing, watching her dig a deeper hole while believing she was the one in control. That week, I started organizing everything. I backed up our financial records, moved some savings to a private account she didn't know about, and had a quiet meeting with a lawyer during my lunch break. He didn't blink when I laid out the situation. "You're not the first," he said plainly. "But you could be the first to do this smart." I left his office with a folder full of paperwork and a shaky sense of calm. The plan wasn't revenge. It was clarity, a quiet departure, a statement she'd never expect from someone like me, someone she saw as passive, pliable, too weak to walk away. I was done begging for scraps of attention from someone who'd already emotionally packed up and moved out. Thursday evening was when the cracks started to show on her end. She came home too early. Her makeup wasn't as perfect. Her excuses were messier. Lenny's car broke down. She mumbled, dropping her bag louder than usual. I didn't ask a thing. I just handed her the glass of wine she never finished. She stared at it like it held secrets. Maybe it did. Later that night, I pretended to sleep while she lay beside me in bed, scrolling through her phone. I could feel her glancing at me. Maybe checking if I was breathing. Maybe checking if I was still the same man she thought she could outsmart. That weekend, her best friend Tasha called while she was in the shower. I let it ring once, just long enough to see the preview. "So, did you tell him yet, or are you still dragging it out?" I didn't answer. I just took a screenshot, filed it with everything else, and moved on with my day. It was getting easier, strangely enough. Once you stop hoping for love to return, the silence starts to feel like peace. Sunday morning, I left the house early and drove to a quiet cafe on the other side of town. I had sent one message the night before, to Lenny. Just his name, no subject line, no context. I waited. At 10:17 a.m., he walked in. He spotted me immediately. He hesitated, then sat across from me like a kid caught with a cheat sheet during finals. "I didn't expect this," he said quietly. I nodded. "Neither did I. But here we are." He opened his mouth, maybe to lie, maybe to explain, but I held up one hand and placed the flash drive between us. "This is all I have," I said. "All the calls, the messages, video from the hotel garage. I'm not interested in theatrics. I just want you to know, I'm leaving her. You can keep the mess." His face changed. Not guilt, not regret, just fear. Not of me, but of exposure. He reached for the drive, but I pulled it back. "Not for you," I said. "This one's for her. You can tell her I said hi." I got up, left him there without finishing my coffee, and drove home. When I walked through the front door, Denise was in the kitchen, flipping pancakes like it was any other Sunday. She smiled. "You're early." I smiled back. She had no idea that the next morning, everything she thought was secure, me, the marriage, the house, would begin unraveling by my hand. The alarm went off at 6:30 a.m. sharp. She reached over and snoozed it like always, groaning as she curled back into the sheets. I lay there beside her, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, already dressed under the covers. I had packed everything the night before, quietly, carefully. Just one suitcase, the essentials, and the folder from the lawyer with all the details of the exit plan. I hadn't slept, not even a minute, but I felt more awake than I had in months. She didn't even notice when I got out of bed. I moved around the room silently, grabbed my bag, walked past the vanity where she kept her perfumes, past the frame on the hallway wall with our wedding photo, her smiling like the world belonged to her, and me just happy to be included. In the kitchen, I left a letter. Not a dramatic manifesto, just a few lines. "I know everything. You can keep pretending if that makes it easier. But I'm done being a placeholder in my own life. M." I didn't text her, didn't call. I just walked out the door while she slept off the lie she'd been living for months. By 7:10, I was on the road. No destination. I just drove. Somewhere quiet, away from the familiar grocery stores where we'd once held hands in checkout lines. Away from the neighbors who still thought we were that solid couple who threw decent barbecues. I ended up in a small lakeside motel 3 hours out. Nothing fancy, just a room with a view of water that didn't judge me. By noon, my phone had blown up. 9 missed calls, 2 voicemails. Then finally, a text. "Where are you? Marvin, this isn't funny." I didn't answer. Then another. "If you're trying to scare me, it's not working." But her tone was different now, tighter. There was a space between her words, like she wasn't sure what I knew, or how much. That uncertainty, that was new, and I let her sit in it. By evening, she texted again. "Can we just talk? Please?" I put the phone down and stepped outside. The motel porch creaked under my weight. I stood there watching the sun disappear behind the trees, wondering if she was standing in our kitchen rereading the note over and over, trying to figure out which mistake had finally pushed me over the edge. Truth is, it wasn't just one. It was all of it. The silence, the eye rolls, the way she dismissed my feelings like they were chores she didn't want to do. The betrayal was the sharpest blow, yes, but the dull ache had been living in our house long before Lenny ever touched her. Later that night, I got one more message. "I'm sorry. Can you come home?" That word again, come. Always so simple, so commanding. This time, it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a lifeline tossed too late. I thought about responding. I did. But what would I say? She didn't lose me because of Lenny. She lost me because she stopped looking at me like I mattered long before he came along. I closed my eyes and deleted her contact from my phone. No anger, no drama, just peace. But this wasn't the end. Because 2 days later, she showed up. I didn't think she'd come looking for me. Not really. I assumed she'd wait a few days, maybe send another half-hearted apology, and when I didn't respond, she'd finally drift off with Lenny for good. That's how I imagined it. Quiet and pathetic, like the way she'd been slowly checking out of our marriage for months. But I was wrong. Tuesday morning, there was a knock at my motel door. Not loud, just 2 soft taps, like someone unsure if they were welcome. I knew it was her before I even opened it. No one else knew where I was. When I pulled the door open, there she was, Denise. Hair tied back hastily, sunglasses in her hand, No makeup, just her raw face looking more confused than angry. The first thing she said wasn't hi. It wasn't I'm sorry. It was, why did you just disappear like that? Like I hadn't left her a letter. Like I hadn't given her all the signs. I didn't disappear, I said quietly. You just stopped seeing me a long time ago. She stepped forward, like she might come in, but I stayed where I was, blocking the doorway. Her eyes scanned the room behind me. One bed, a half-packed suitcase, the folders still on the table. Then her expression shifted. Not grief. Not regret. Panic. You're really leaving me? She whispered. I tilted my head. You left me first. I just made it official. She looked away, biting the inside of her cheek like she always did when she had something to say but didn't want to admit it. Then, finally, there's nothing going on between me and Lenny. I laughed. Not loud. Not bitter. Just one, dry, tired laugh. Denise, I was at the hotel. I saw you. I have the footage. Please don't insult me now. We're too far past that. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her face flushed, and she leaned against the railing outside my room. I didn't know how to fix us, she said finally, her voice cracking. I thought you didn't care anymore. You stopped fighting for me. I did, I said, voice steady. I just got tired of losing every round. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked like she wanted to cry but didn't know if it would help. I looked at her and felt nothing. No rage, no heartbreak, just distance. I had loved her for so long that I forgot what it felt like not to. And now that I had stepped outside of her world, I couldn't believe how small I had made mine to fit inside hers. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. You want me to delete his number? Block him? Quit my job? Just say it. I shook my head. That's not what this is about. Then what do you want? I want you to understand that none of those things matter now. You already chose. And I finally chose too. She was crying now, silent tears rolling down her cheeks, and I should have felt something. But I didn't. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't satisfaction. It was release. I thought you'd always forgive me, she whispered. That was your mistake, I said, and gently closed the door. Inside, I stood still for a long time. The air felt lighter. It wasn't over yet, not legally. There were still documents to sign, accounts to separate, logistics to handle. But emotionally, that was the moment it ended. Except, that wasn't the last time I heard from her. Because a week later, she sent me something unexpected. Something that changed everything again. A week passed. I hadn't responded to her calls, and I'd ignored the emails she sent with subject lines like, "We need to talk," or "Can we please just meet one last time?" I was done reopening wounds just because someone else was suddenly ready to feel guilty. But then, late Friday evening, while watching the lake outside my motel room shimmer under fading light, I got a text. Not from her number, from a different one. No name, no pleasantries. Just a single link to a video file. I hesitated. For all I knew, it could have been a final attempt to manipulate me, reel me back into the life I'd finally stepped away from. But curiosity won. I tapped the screen. It was a recording. Shaky at first, then steady. Denise sat in front of her phone, eyes red, no makeup, looking more like the version of her I used to know before everything became curated, polished, performative. For once, she didn't look like she was putting on a show. Marvin, she began, voice quiet. I'm not sending this to ask you to come back. I know that part's over. I think I'm finally starting to understand why. She paused, breathing in sharply. I spent so long blaming you for how unhappy I was. I told myself you weren't trying, that you were distant. But the truth is, you were always there. You were just quieter than I wanted, and I mistook that for weakness. I confused loyalty with complacency, and I let someone else fill the space I created between us. She looked down, held something up, the letter I left on the kitchen table. I read this every day, she said. Not because I want to change your mind, but because I need to remember the moment I finally lost something good. She ended with a soft, broken smile. I hope you find peace, Marvin. Real peace. And maybe, one day, someone who sees the quiet things about you and loves them the way I never did. I sat there for a long time after the video ended. Not because it hurt. Not because it made me question my decision. But because it was the first honest thing she'd given me in a long, long time. And somehow that was enough. A month later, the divorce was finalized. Clean. No fights. No pettiness. I kept the car, the savings I had quietly moved, and more importantly, my dignity. I found a new place 2 towns over, small but cozy, with neighbors who didn't know my history. I took up journaling, hiking, even started talking to people again without feeling like I had to apologize for taking up space. Sometimes I still think about her, not with bitterness, but with acceptance. We were never really partners. I was just the safety net she never thought she'd fall through. But now, I'm finally walking without one. Thanks for listening to my story. You're on Reddit Confessions, where the truth always finds a voice. If you made it this far, tell me in the comments, what moment in this story hit you the hardest? And have you ever walked away from someone who didn't realize they lost you until it was too late? I'll be reading.